I live in Shaftesbury down in Bennington County, represent Shaftesbury and Glastonbury and Sunderland. And we will go around the room. We've got one committee member on Zoom who we won't forget.
I'm Leland Morgan. I represent all of Grand Isle County and the western portion of the town of Milton, where I live.
Jed Lipsky, represent Memorial One, Stowe.
Richard Nelson, Orleans One, Derby.
Frank Burt, Cabot, Danville, Peachum.
Don O'Brien, I represent Windsor Orange One, which is Royalton and the fair town of Tunbridge.
Thank you. Well, as I said, I'm Bob Allen.
Sorry, y'all. Heather Supernaut, Windsor 4, Barnard, Pomfret, Bridgewater, West Hartford.
Sorry. Anyway, I'm past president of the Vermont Fair Association. I'm shepherding these people around to the various rooms. I've been here many times. I've not been in this group before for some reason. We want to thank you for the time that you're giving us. As I said, I've got to pull a few people out in about 20 minutes, but we have representatives here from the Art and Fair up in Orleans County, Jason Seacard. We have Peg Sherlock and Izzy Provancher from Tunbridge, Ken Button from Addison County, Randy Beam from Lamoille County, and Robert Condon from the Vermont State Fair. So I'm going to let them tell you about the fairs, and Robert and Jason Jason does have to go with me. Robert and Izzy does not have to leave as soon as the rest of us. So Jason, you want to start?
Sure.
Make it short so everybody can get a chance. Thank you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank
Thank you. Appreciate the funding that we always get for the stipends and capital grants. It helps us to continue with our infrastructure. I talked to each of our superintendents. So I got a little tidbit from each one that I'm going to try to share with you. On our Gymkhana program, we average 50 to 60 competitors, and there's crowds there for those spectators. There's 5 Gymkhanas we hold between May and October. Her chatter throughout the year is we have the best footing on the grounds for the horse shows. They're always getting compliments on that. In the last few years, they did a buckle up sponsorship, and doing that has doubled the traffic and of course then it doubles the purse money for those people. We handed out 6 champion and 6 reserve champion buckles in October. In 2024, we had one event for the high school rodeo event. And this year we have 3 scheduled for the 2025 season. So every time we start to do something with improvements, we start getting growth, and that's a great thing. It's a great feeling to get the community members involved and to get the support dollar wise and to carry on our tradition. We are the last fair in New England that holds harness racing on our grounds. There is Maine still has harness racing, but they are pari-mutuel betting, and we're not. We have no betting in our program. We host 20 to 30 horses for a one-day event. Sometimes it slides into 2. In these, we have horses that pull that are 5 to 10 hours away that bring their families and come to entertain us and join in with the locals that have horses that also race. We've been doing that on the grounds for about 158 years. I know there's misses in that, but I haven't read a history book that tells me which war said we didn't have it, but we do know we didn't have it during COVID. That's from the 4-H participation has been increasing. We have a new dairy superintendent. She's dressed up the area. I like what I saw this year. We had a lot of color there, a lot of artwork, and she's got a great amount of enthusiasm with it, and that spreads, right? Like when you get near somebody that's got great energy, it just spreads, and makes you feel good about being there. And it helps the kids grow into the grounds. We really need to see those kids come play. They need to come see it. And when you have a very dedicated person like her, it's awesome. She's new to the grounds to us. She's probably Kelly Jenkins, if you're asking who it is. Yeah. No ill will about anybody in the past. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not downing where we were, but when you get a new person that's got some juice, it's great to share that. In our horse pulling arena, we had it's a multi-generational event where we will often see grandparents, parents teaching their younger generations the ins and outs of pulling and caring for the animals in a simple tradition. Over the years, we have seen many kids go up in the pulling arena and have watched their skills both with animals and socially. We have recently had a young man who was picked as the Teamster of the Year by a family that awards this award every year at the Barton Fair because it was his favorite fair. He came until the year he had passed. We watched this young man and the Mitchell family tear up, knowing that Roger would be so proud of how the young man has grown up and with the love of horses and pulling have impacted his life. It's not only an event for people with horses, but we have spectators that come in their favorite horses or even drivers, and they come to cheer on. We get messages all year long from spectators wanting to make sure when the next pull is. They can be as we're always trying to make classes that we think will work. And one thing that we haven't, this is directly to me, but we had 55 teams of pony and horses. The teams traveled as far from northern Maine and Connecticut to participate. And that's a arena that was built. I don't know do you know what year that was built?
15, 16,
Years ago.
yeah.
It's hard to, but it's a very stout structure and it's worked very well for us. And I know there was a lot of community involvement, and I'm sure I wasn't on the board when that was put up, but I'm sure that there was support for this same capital program, but I don't want to
25.
go on any further. Sorry. One last
Question
the
for
members
you
pick it up.
and for Addison and Rutland, 3-acre rule.
Yeah, so for us, we're just starting to get into that. We have our permit and our engineer, but we don't have a design, so we don't know the depth of it. But I'll let some of the other fairs that have more.
I'm gonna go last, and I'm the one that has the most time. I'm more than happy to dive in.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about it and what kind of devastation it's causing to you and your
Absolutely.
board.
Economics are always challenging.
The Orleans County Fair built on the sand moraine.
So yeah, definitely, at the end, I'll definitely
Thank
speak to it. More than happy.
It's hard, I know, when we get talking about our fairs, we just can talk all day, so I'll try to keep it brief as well. I'm Peggy Sherlock from Tunbridge Fair. John knows us well. Yeah, we also have Izzy Pravancha here. Like to thank you very much for your support of our fairs and for putting some money in the budget for capital funds and a stipend fund. We've used our capital funds. We use them every year, and if you come to our fair and look at our grounds, you can see the improvements we've done. Every year we spend money, lots of money, into improvements. Last year, our big project was a new bathroom, which is much needed and really nice. The year before, we took down an old bingo hall and put up a new building we're calling Heritage Hall. So we've spent that money. We also have spent a lot of money on electrical improvements, and that's what our money this year is going for. We've upgraded the north end of the grounds, and now we're upgrading the south end. As we have a lot of campers, and as they come in with their bigger and bigger RVs, they want 50 amp power, and you can't get 50 amps off 20 amps apparently. And the vendors all need power. Everybody's bigger and bigger and bigger, so we're putting a lot of money into electrical. And we just voted last night to put extra money into our internet service and we're kind of in this dead zone, and we're really trying to get it so that when people are on the grounds, they can actually use their phones and the vendors can use their phones. And with any luck, at some point, we'll be able to actually take credit cards or still totally a cash basis, which is difficult. Nobody carries cash anymore. So those are the big things that we put the money into. I hope that you've all had a chance to come to our fair. It's always 10 days after Labor Day. It's a 4-day fair. It's mostly agriculture. We have a lot of showing, a lot of kids involved. Our average attendance is about 32,000 over 4 days. Saturday's our big day, so come another day if you want to find a place to park. Our biggest limitation is space, so.
Question from,
Yes, question.
I've been there. And
Oh, great.
There's the stream, the river.
There is.
Has
First branch of the White River.
any of the high water affected that lower area?
Yeah, we get flooded on a regular basis. Yeah.
There's always.
Yeah, every time there's an ice jam, we're apt to get flooded. We had a huge flood 2 years ago in July. All of a sudden, remember that big flood? And yeah, but and we had to cancel. We had a big dog show planned and that got canceled. Thank goodness, because everyone would have had to been, they were stranded. The roads were all closed.
Water dogs, that would have been great.
But, in the winter, we just leave all the barn doors open, and if it floods, the water runs through the ox barns and very little damage, but there was a lot of damage from that flood, but with silt.
What's the name of the stream?
It's the first branch of the White River.
White.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
any other questions for
Peggy,
World's Fair? Peggy?
the World's Fair. You can ask John too.
Representative
I'll
Lipke.
just
Yes.
comment. I've been a regular attendee to Tunbridge Fair,
Perfect.
most every other fair in the States. Highlight of our summer and autumn. But this year I got to see Representative O'Brien up on the hill there and
Oh, good.
running the store, and that was a big thrill.
Good. Yeah, he dresses up pretty nice, doesn't he?
You don't have a choice.
We do, most of the town is involved in the fair in one way or another. And yeah, it's a real community event. And then all summer long, we have things going on too. So it's not just the fair. We use the grounds, and then in the winter, we use it for winter storage. So it's a real resource.
If I could interject too, we also use the fairground for community events as well that are specific to our town. So we've done turkey trucks down there. We've done a variety of other
Memorial Day events.
volunteer
yeah.
community events.
Another question?
The fields where we park, are those leased or they belong to someone?
They are leased. Yep. The fair owns as much as we can, but the grounds below on the southern end of the fairgrounds are leased. The northern end, where you cross a little footbridge, that the fair owns. It was given to them by my in-laws, so. I will not take all your time. Thank you very much, though.
I was just gonna say, no one can die during the Tunbridge Fair. Our undertaking family is very busy.
Morning. I'm from the Addison County Fair and Field Days. My name is Ken Button. We're a 5-day fair. 34,000 paid attendants plus volunteers. Pretty much everything I would planning to say. Peg's already beat me to it. We have similar projects, similar issues. I'd like to maybe emphasize we have 154 4-H kids involved the week of the fair, and then 100 FFA kids involved in the week of the fair. They each have their own food booth buildings. So that's a great training for the kids in the high school to do the food service. It's also a hub for the county to come together once a year. It's a primary income source for the Lions Club, the Maple Association, The New Haven Fire Department parks their cars. The Mason, I take it back, but they do their gates. The Masons park the cars. So I just want to emphasize it's a community hub get together. And yes, we have functions all summer, mostly horse shows on weekends. And we utilize winter storage. All the buildings we have last year were full for winter storage. And I'll stop there if any questions.
You have a pretty sizable hot tractor pull, don't you, during the fair? Like, might be the only one recognized in the state of Vermont by the Tractor Pulling Association.
Yeah, it seems like that's a huge emphasis for our fair. In the recent 5 years, we've been bringing in the New York tractor pullers because I'm getting out of my league, but they are sanctioned, whatever that.
Yeah.
And so people in the competition, they get the sanction from the New York and they put on a great show. And then the Vermont tractor pullers do the balance of the shows.
I need to see the little riding lawnmowers.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, Ken, again, I'm a loyal attendee. In 2023, the parking that's been a kind of rainy summer was pretty much,
Awful.
I'd say you lost 90% of your parking capacity. Is there any resiliency efforts or funds to deal with that, or was that a one-off for you all?
If we get similar weather, we're always going to have issues because of the Addison County clay.
Right.
One thing we did do, we widened the road to a backfield so that people could meet, because previously it was a one-way road. So we have this back pasture, I will call it, on a hillside, but at least it's new turf. So when the other is severely rutted up, we have this backup. Yeah.
Representative O'Brien. One other question here, I think.
Okay.
Representative
A
O'Brien.
couple of years ago, there were challenges with water and septic. I know when Diane was there and you met those somehow. Is that still?
We've gotten through those challenges. Our septic is all stored during the fair and then pumped out all the way after. Yes.
I'm going to take some people in front, but I thank you very much.
All right.
And leave Robert and Randy here because they don't have to be here next week.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
See you in the fair.
Bob, what fair were you?
Well, I'm not a director of any fair in Vermont. I'm the director of the Hopkinton State Fair in New Hampshire, but I work at Tunbridge and I work at the Vermont State Fair running the horse, ox, and pony pulling. So that's kind of my superintendent's duties. This new fair.
Are you going to Senate Ag now, or?
We are headed to corrections and institutions.
The Capitol bill.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Thanks for the service. We put it to Russell.
Thank you.
No, this is house Ag. That's,
Great.
yeah, all right. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, never been.
Has a lot of similarities. It's a nice fair.
All right, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Randy Bean from Lamoille County Field Days. I also want to thank you very much for our stipend and our grant money. Last year, our big project, we replaced what we call Harlow Hall. It's a fairly large building, and normally we have, vendors in the building, and then the front is open where they do concerts. They do different shows during the day. This year, our big project is the White Arena, which is the horse showing area. At the moment, it's turf, but it's all being taken out this year, putting it to sand, making it a lot better. I myself do the animal barn, and it seems like each year I have to turn more people away because no room for more animals. Going to try to do something here in the near future. The past couple years, due to the major flooding we've had, it was like a year to the date, past 2 years, everybody very, very appreciative. The fact that we did still do field days. We're in a location where it didn't affect us with the weather, but with everything, it was just a nice break for everybody to come to it. One of the things I have organized this year, and we haven't had it for years, and there's a big interest in it. I'm going to be doing 2 working dog demonstrations with a man from Stannard. Last year, he brought a few of his sheep for display in the animal barn, and he was highly impressed with how the animal barn was. That I got information from him, and we do have 2 working dog shows, and that's a lot of people looking forward to that this year.
I'd drive to see that.
Yeah, a lot of people. And I know I've kind of, because I'm local, and it's like, oh my gosh, you really, and yeah, we're holding one. Our fair this year is the 18th, 19th, and 20th of July. We're going to have one show, 12:30 on the 18th. And then the other show is going to be Sunday, the 20th at 1. And a lot of interest in that. Yes.
So the grounds has, it's very sandy and well drained there, so you
Yes.
never have problems. And there is no stream nearby, as I recall.
No.
It's a great piece of land.
Yes.
Hyde Park?
Johnson,
Johnson, okay.
right off 100C in Johnson. And I'm also grounds maintenance supervisor. And I'm going to incorporate this year, because I'm the one who does mainly all the trimming constantly. I've got a local that she's going to bring 3 of her goats each morning, fence off along the outside perimeter and some of the other areas where it's just crazy around the track to try to keep up with.
That's great.
She's going to bring her 3 goats, and she's only like 5 minutes away from the fair, and then come in the afternoon, take them home and bring them back the next day. So it's like, thank you. I'll put up that portable fencing every day. It will save me a lot of time. But I think that is about it for me.
Can you give us a sense of, how many visitors do you get each year?
We get, I think this last year, we were just talking about it, and I think this is one of our best years we've had, but we get around 10,000 people, and we are such a, small fair, but we do go 3 days. And I know at our meeting last night, the secretary was saying that I guess we're going to have a few new vendors this year with different products. So
My other question was, how many people does it take to keep the fair going?
Well, actually, and that's one of our issues. I mean, people volunteering to help. At most, I would say during the course of the 3 days, I would say there's got to be between 150, 200 people that come volunteer and help out. And for up to the fair and then after, there's about maybe 6 to 10 people that keep quite busy
on the board. And
yes, yeah.
Do you have a logging chainsaw axe competition type thing, forestry?
We do. And that, I believe, is held, that is over behind our Maple building, where they do the carving and
They have competitions to see who can cut logs the fastest, that type of thing.
I believe they are doing it.
This year.
Yeah.
Tucker Riggs of LSF.
Yes,
A lot of people love that.
yes.
So, you know, others.
Representative O'Brien.
You have rides, right? Carnival
Yes.
rides, and who's that vendor?
Miller.
Or do they do other fairs too?
I believe so, yes,
They're subcontracted with us as well.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
We
we,
do Gillette, right? But there are about what, 3 or 4 maybe in the state? And we're always, you know,
Yeah.
if they lose like H2B workers,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always dicey if you lose.
I know we've had them for the past, well, this is going to be my 4th year involved. And I started out, Gary Wright. He had operated the animal barn for many years, 26 years. And I helped him out my first year and then he passed away. So I took over Animal Barn, and since then we have all new, like 10 by 10 kennel cages. We have nice little like Christmas lights over the beams and stuff in them. So people are quite impressed. We get repeat people each year. Can't wait for the fair to come to see the animals. So yes,
Randy,
yes,
I noted that you're gonna convert from turf to a sandier surface.
Yes.
For the, riding
yes.
ring facility. Is that driven by demand or,
Well-
are you gonna expand events in that ring?
I believe this year, yes, because once it is sand, I know they do Gymkhana
Right.
there, and they also have like but once it is converted to sand, then it can be more
Or for
utilized.
and up to Caledonia, others where
Right.
Jim Cat is.
Yeah.
It's a big draw.
That's a big event
And,
also at Lamoille.
So we always go to watch
Yes.
horse events, but that's.
My issue is once it gets started, I'm not usually able to get out of the animal barn, so I don't get around.
But that's gonna be for this summer.
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
it will be ready before field days this year. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for your
All right,
time.
yeah, thank you.
Well, again, thank you for having us. My name is Robert Congdon. I'm the Vermont State Fair in Rutland, and I'm also the current president of the Fairs and Field Days Association in Vermont. So just to touch briefly, I know, I'm not sure what our time constraint is because I know we wanted to touch on 3 acre as well. So,
Yeah, we've got half an hour.
oh, okay. I wanted to make sure we weren't up against a limit. So
And the time will go quickly though.
yes, it will. So just to touch base on our grants, again, we are very appreciative of the grant and the stipend. What my goal as president was to eliminate, our bathroom facilities had been let go for a number of years. And so we invested heavily over the last 6 years into bathroom infrastructure. And actually, I'm pleased to say that this year's grant, which was just approved, we are going to be doing our last handicap accessible addition onto a bathroom, which is going to actually eliminate the last porta potty on the grounds, which was really a great step for us. So it was mainly, we've tried to gear ourselves to infrastructure needs that either had been let go for a period of time or had just long-term needs, and the facilities, bathroom facilities was really one of the major ones. We've also got several buildings slated over the next 5 years as a part of our 5-year plan that as we all deal with on our fairgrounds, the buildings were built typically as cheaply as possible when they put them up back maybe the turn of the century or whenever it was. And typically they need sill replacements and need to be put on more permanent foundations and things like that. So we've been targeting that. Our dairy barns is where we're starting in now, which are all really, again, much like Tunbridge, we're dealing with really historic structures that have been around for a very long time that we want to preserve. We want to keep them for the next generations. So we've been targeting that. As well as our 4-H building needed some upgrades, which it really is a treasure to our facility, and we're doing our best to preserve that. since it was built on the grounds and largely funds raised by 4-H back in the 1930. So trying to preserve those types of things as well. So I like to say that we've gone through kind of a renaissance in the last 5 years. We were really in trouble, quite frankly. My predecessors, for whatever reasons, things were really in tough shape. And I'm really pleased to say that aside from 3 Acre, which we'll dive into here in a second, we have really been able to get back on a pretty solid footing. Our attendance is back up. We're in the same realm as what you were shared with from Tunbridge and Addison, where we've crested over the 30,000 mark now in our 5 days, which is really exciting. It's not back to the 50 and 60 where we used to be, but we're definitely making great strides to get there. And in a changing population, we're trying to find new ways to be relevant to the public and fulfill, like most, we are an agricultural society to maintain that heritage and to keep that as a part of the state of Vermont. So one of the things we instituted that was really popular last year was a passport program for kids. And they went around the fairgrounds and they got stamps at different locations, which drew them into areas that they may not have necessarily gone to before. Because I remember being a kid and you wanted to hit every ride, but it wasn't quite so interesting to go in where the vegetables and the floriculture were. So it drew those families, and they got a little prize if they got however many stamps out of the book, and that was really a popular thing. So we're doing things like that, and we're working on that. So I'll take questions and then we can dive into 3 Acre if you'd like.
Your upgrading of the toilet facilities, you connect into a municipal sewage supply?
So city municipal sewer is what's on the grounds. And so and municipal water. So we've worked with them, actually grants prior to my coming in. One of the big upgrades that they did with grant money back then was the fairgrounds was always estimated and never had actual meters on the water, and they installed and upgraded meters on all of our water intakes. So we've worked closely with the city on that.
Good.
So Tunbridge has the World's Fair and Rutland has the State Fair.
We are the State Fair. Yep.
What makes the State Fair the State Fair?
So it predates me actually. So I've got a lot of heritage with the fair. My grandfather was the president of the fair when it became the State Fair. I know at the time the State Fair had been in White River and became defunct, and Rutland stepped in and took over and became the State Fair at that time. So yeah, I don't know all the history to that, but certainly like many of the others in the room, we are seeking to do a well-rounded example of what Vermont is. We're trying to make sure we're balancing everything between agriculture and obviously the commercial side as well, to make sure all of our patrons get a well-rounded experience.
Just a comment, Chairman Durfee. Rutland was considered, I won't say the center of the state, but it was midway between Bennington and Berlin.
Sure.
So it was where a lot of us came for services, whether it was from Bonneville, and
certainly at the time a railroad hub too.
It was
centrally located.
Central railroad hub. Yeah.
Did I hear talk earlier, you're doing rodeos there?
We have done rodeos the last couple of years. We are going to do one again this year. It's been pretty popular. We partner with Pond Hill, which holds rodeos every weekend, just to our west. And that has been a positive for us. And so far, like I say, that is the plan. We're going to rebook again this year as well.
During the State Fair.
Yes. Yep.
That's got to be a terrific crowd draw.
It has grown. Initially, it was a slow uptick. It was a slow start, but it has definitely grown in the last 2 years for sure.
What's the acreage of the facility there?
So we're about 75 acres. It's a little bit more than that now, because we actually just a couple of years ago took a donation of some property, but it's not directly connected. It's on the other side of the railroad tracks. So that property is actually held. We have a sub foundation, kind of like Tunbridge, I think, has a sub foundation of the association. And actually the foundation holds that property. And quite frankly, we're not really sure what the future of that holds. It's a great site to consider potentially solar in the future.
It's an active track.
Yes, yeah. So that's one of the struggles that, without some sort of an underpass or overpass, it's never really accessible. There's also some pretty significant wetlands in that area. So what that holds in the future, I'm not really sure on that.
Robert, how many weekends a year, do you have things going on? Like, I love the historic marker that says like Babe Ruth twice.
Yeah.
So it's and Tunbridge is the same way, that it's not just a fair now. These are
correct
hubs for all sorts of things.
We are starting typically the first event, we get storage out by typically the last week of April. And the last weekend of April is the first major event where we have Vintage Market Days rents and comes in. They do 2 shows a year and they actually bookend the year. They start the year and they end us typically around Columbus Day weekend. So from that point on, there's certainly times of year that are a little bit slower. September really slows down. I think, schools are back in session, different things are happening. And then the uptick is kind of slow. May has some slow weekends in it. But when we really get going, definitely by Memorial Day weekend and all the way again until Labor Day, it's pretty solid. I mean, we've got weekly events. We've got very rarely a weekend that doesn't have something going on, whether it's agriculture or commercial something. Lots of car shows. We are now the home of, I think, 3 car shows and we're, I think, one of the few commercial truck shows in the state now. We just rolled that out last year and this year will be the second one of those. So most every week there's something going on.
Like one-off concerts still, like I saw George Jones there.
Yeah, so the concert market is really difficult right now. And Tim Shea's not here from Champlain. He could certainly talk to it as well. The capital that you need to be able to put up now is so significant. I mean, you're not talking, before production, which production in our case, you're talking probably another $50,000 on top. You're looking anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 to even start, to really get somebody of notoriety. Sometimes you can pick somebody up, and what we've tried to do is we actually call it playing the short game, where we're going to play and try to pick somebody up that's traveling through and just looking to fill a date. And that's worked well for us the last few years. That's certainly something that we're going to continue to do. And we've really picked up some great acts that way. And it's been popular. The summer concerts, I would like to see come back. It's been several years now since we've done that. And again, the large cost prohibitive nature of that is my predecessors did away with a stage. There's a lot of things that you have to rent now to come in. And I hope to be able to sit here in another year or 2, provided we can get our 3-acre stuff situated. One of our plans within the next 5 years is to rebuild a stage that will help us cut back on some of those upfront costs.
So we have heard about concerns about the 3-acre rule.
Sure.
We may not all be up to speed on what the 3-acre rule is. You probably are. So if you want to give us
I can definitely give you, give you the 30,000 foot.
And how it's impacting you.
So we, unfortunately, are the poster child for the 3-acre rule when it comes to the problems. Again, 75 acres. The 3-acre rule, when you're looking at it, was really designed, and I've talked to multiple people in the legislature as well as multiple of the environmental lobby and different that have said, well, Robert, we never intended for you to be caught in this. And so that's one of the struggles, is we were an unintended consequence to what was passed. So over 75 acres, you have to imagine it's the equivalent of rebuilding our infrastructure from the ground up. It's just the fairgrounds since 1846 has been grandfathered on every other law. This is the first law that really did away with all grandfathering. So when that happened, the requirements, we are the proud owners of about 16.9 acres of impermeable surface. We also have Muzzy Brook, which runs directly through our property, which has been deemed an impaired watershed, which means under the 3-acre regulations, if you're on an impaired watershed, your treatment requirements go from 50% to 100%. So in other words, we have to capture 100% of all stormwater coming off of our property, and it has to be captured. And because it's impaired, The current regulations say the emphasis of our treatment needs to be retention. In other words, we need to build facilities to hold that water, filter it as well, but before it gets released, it needs to be held. So I did bring a few maps just in case this came up, and I'm more than happy to pass those around. This is our site. Anything green and pink, I think there might be, is there one stuck there? No. Let's see.
To include roofs.
Yep. So anything on that map, and I'm sorry, you'll have to share. I should have grabbed a couple more. Anything on that map that's green is a roof. And anything that's in the pink is your gravel, or because gravel counts as well. So it's either gravel or it's asphalt or concrete. And what doesn't exist is the blue cubes and rectangles on there are what is proposed for our retainment. Those are all going to have to be installed in our underground facilities to hold the water, and we have to get the water to it. We are roughly looking, our current price tag is $3.7 million. That is potentially up to $200,000 of engineering. And we are currently, I'll go to that in just a second. We're currently in a stalemate because we have no path forward right now. So we have engineering that would need to be completed. And then that is what allows you to get your permit in hand. And then you have 5 years to build. In that 3.7 million, there also is $160,000 roughly of impact fees that will have to be paid into the system because feasibly we cannot capture 100% of the water. There's just no way to do that. So anything you can't capture, you have to pay an impact fee on of $50,000 an acre. And then of course we have to pay our yearly permitting fees as well on top of all of that. So we are really struggling. The rest of the 3.7 million is the build. And the question right now is if that's even enough, because we know we're going to find infrastructure that is not on the maps. We know that there's infrastructure that's there that nobody remembers from back in the 1800s. So what are we going to find in the process? We know we have much of our utilities as far as water and electric and sewer are underground. So it's a given we're going to hit those in the process. So there's lots of questions of really, out of the 3 million, that is really set aside for the build, is it even enough for that? Our impasse right now is the money that's been set aside. You'll remember potentially that $2 million got put between DEC and Agency of Agriculture out of the Clean Water Fund, specifically to the fairs. Because we don't have a permit in hand, we're going to miss it. It's going to miss the ARPA deadline. So there's no way that we can apply and get the 500,000 that's going to go to us. And it's not open for engineering. I don't have up to $200,000 in the bank for engineering. I just don't have it.
Can't access that funding because you're not at that step yet.
Correct. And the money currently that's come out of DEC was $50,000 if you applied for it. $20,000 went into A&R for administrative fees. It got taken off the top. So we really were all given $30,000, and $30,000 is about a third of that is going to be chewed up just by getting the map that's in front of you for the feasibility study. Because it was over $10,000 just to get a feasibility study to have this piece of paper that tells us what potentially we have to build, because this is not the actual engineering. It hasn't even been engineered yet.
Representative Morgan.
Is there a deadline on this one? This should be completed or done?
So, and we are a victim of like many of the businesses that are on that list are currently behind schedule. Our engineering and permit process should, based on the current deadlines, should have been completed July 1. I just got, as you'll see, the date on this, the feasibility study just got completed. And I think the date on that is like January 10th or something along that. Yeah. So we just completed feasibility, and my engineer is currently telling me it's going to take at least a year to engineer our site if we talk to him and hired him full-time tomorrow. So that's the struggle.
Interim, are there some kind of punishment, some sort of?
So currently, we have been told that we're not, because they're not punishing anybody else, they can't make a poster child out of us and punish us, which I guess is good for us, honestly. We did spend some time yesterday in House Environmental and testified there yesterday, because of the struggles and because of what we're seeing. And I was straight up honest that, we're 179-year-old tradition is at risk of dying. I mean, if we can't do something, we're gone.
But in the interim, you're allowed to continue.
In the interim, I'm allowed to continue, and so far, we've been allowed to apply for our stipends and grants. We've not been barred from those, which is a blessing because, we need to continue on our infrastructure. My vision and where I'm at right now is we're going to continue as if we're going to be here for another 200 years. I want to keep, chugging ahead. And we understand that we all are going to have to play a role. But what I'm arguing with anybody that I meet that will listen is that role needs to be equitable and needs to be in such a way that it's feasible. And I don't think, when we've mentioned the $3.7 million, everybody immediately just staggers just because I think we're one of the highest cost sites potentially in the state. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but certainly it's a very, very significant cost. And if I don't know as if there's really the pot of money out there that can be thrown at this problem for that.
There are a couple of hands. What's your annual budget?
About 450,000.
Is that brook crystal clear before it comes into the fairground, then it becomes impaired, or is it impaired off site?
So I got asked that question yesterday if we've done actual water testing, and we have not. It's something we actually talked about in the my board that's here talked in the car on the ride up was maybe we should do that, because I will tell you that on our property what we see is really clear water. We're not seeing dirty water coming onto the fairgrounds. Now it runs above us through three neighborhoods. So I think that the bulk of the issue is certainly to the east of us before it gets onto our property. And we empty under the railroad tracks and it empties into a swamp. So, I mean, we're kind of the end of the line, but I will also tell you that the city, municipality is looking at us as one of the easiest areas to treat because we're about the only open ground that they can look at. So we're getting pressure on two sides. We're getting pressure from the 3 acre folks, for 3 acre compliance, but we're also getting pressure from the municipality because we are the easiest place to put treatment in their eyes, because it's a lot easier to treat on our site than it is to treat in the neighborhoods upstream where it's literally flowing in backyards. So I'm not really sure what the answer is going to be on that. We are working closely with the municipality. There's some overlap, like part of the municipality plan is actually in our plan that just got published in January. So there's going to have to be some meetings of the minds to determine, and of course, it's 2 different state agencies that have to discuss that, and they really don't talk to each other until everybody's eyeball to eyeball. One of the disheartening things that happened is about 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting on Zoom with DEC, Agency of Ag, and that's when we found out that we were going to miss the 500,000 that initially had been set aside for us. And we essentially on that call begged for a site visit. We begged for them to come down. Even after the snow melted or something, just could you please come down? And we essentially got told no. We got told that there would be a Zoom meeting and that was about it.
Representative O'Brien.
Just a couple of questions. So this flows into the Otter Creek, maybe?
Yes. So the brook does dump into Otter Creek. It is the Otter Creek watershed.
Like one thing for the committee is introductory wise, it's the western part of the state's fairs, which are
correct
on the hook for this because they're part of the Lake Champlain TMDL, right?
That's the main driver, but we are told that the eastern side sometime in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be targeted for the Connecticut.
Right, because there'll be a nitrogen TMDL.
Yep.
Yeah. So has there been a proposal to carve out for fairs and field days?
Last legislative session, there was talk, and it did not gain steam. And then that's when the solution got found that, well, hopefully 500,000 for each fair would be enough. And honestly, for Addison and for Essex, it appears to be enough. Jason is very early in the process, so we're not sure where he's going to land yet. But it's obviously nowhere near what we're going to require. So I think that the hope initially was that the money would be the solution, that the money would be able to meet the need and it would solve it. And unfortunately, in our case, that's not going to be the case.
Really do a scoping study.
Correct.
Representative Burt and then Representative Lipsky.
Chair, is there a way to get, it sounds like you were asking DEC to come down and do water testing? Is that what you're asking?
No, for a site visit,
Site.
just to come down so that they could understand the site. I mean, it's one thing to look at a map, but actually to walk the grounds and to be able to see there's different topography, there's different, that the drainage pipes, potentially pump stations, to have to pump them to the area, we're talking massive amounts of
Seems to me
infrastructure.
like the first step is testing, and getting data. So if somebody comes once a week and tests upstream of your site and downstream of your site at the same time, does it every week during the summer? And if those samples are coming back with virtually the same numbers, that would mean your site's not contributing to it. Basically, so.
And I guess I would have to, I would have to research and find out, but I don't believe, even if it was the case, I don't believe right now that there's a carve out for that provision. I think that would have to be added to the regulations to say, if you can prove that a site's not contributing, they should be allowed to continue, as is or however.
We know what, is this legislation that went through last year?
Yeah.
2015-ish, maybe even 13.
We know what bill or act number this is?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Look it up.
It's cost the schools money too.
Yeah, I know our school district right now and at home is going through it too.
Our school went through it for a non-problem.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, thank you. Robert, the Dana Avenue, and then there used to be a hockey rink down there. Is that owned by the Rutland?
We do own that.
That's part of the fair, not municipal.
Correct.
Is that rink still operating?
We use it for storage and we use it for other things in the summertime. There are some shows that take place in there. There's some, other activities that occur in there. When the Spartan Arena got built behind the mall, they ceased making ice and actually the compressors got pulled and got put up there. The infrastructure is still there. If compressors were.
Quite a large.
It is. Yeah, it's
useful structure.
The long-term goal for that facility, and again, this would be down the road quite a ways, would be to essentially make it Rutland's Expo Center, that we would have, an indoor ability. But again, all of our money's going elsewhere right now.
Is that on the map that?
Yes, it is. It would be
It's on the south end. This is US 7.
Yep.
North is that way. It's this green. Roofed area. And we used to bring kids down.
Sure. When it was Raha. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had a question. Yeah, go ahead. It seems with the amount of money that's involved in taking care of the problem, it would almost seem that it would be more sensible to maybe find a new location of 75 acres and relocate. Have it been thought of and thought about?
So that poses a whole new set of issues. So the property was donated by 5 families back in 1846. The deed states that if the fairgrounds ceases operations on it, it goes back to the heirs.
It's quite often.
So the struggle with that would be finding the heirs, having them take responsibility for the property. It's estimated now that you're looking at over 200 heirs likely that you would have to track down.
It's just not yours to sell.
Yeah, we do not have the ability to sell.
We've had the same sort of issues in the town that I live in.
Okay.
Franklin's going through that, right? Franklin County Fair was
Yes.
part of the airport,
Piece.
right?
So the Franklin County Fair, I was gonna just mention, it's not on the list here, right?
Yeah. So Franklin County, I can speak to that just as president of the association. Franklin does not have dates for this year and they are not able to use the property for this year. I believe they are still hunting for property at this point, but nothing has really come through.
Just so that we're all on the same page, because we did hear testimony 2 years ago or last year, but can you just in 30 seconds explain what's happening in Franklin County?
So my understanding is that there's the land that they were leasing has been targeted for an industrial park. And so because of that, the fair had to vacate the property. And I believe a deadline has been set for that. I'm not sure what exactly it is, that if they wanted to remove any of their infrastructure, they had to remove that. The industrial park in the next couple of years, I believe, is slated to start construction.
Related to airport.
Yes, yeah.
And they haven't found a place yet.
They have not found a place yet. They're still looking. I know that.
And as part of, even if they found new land, because they're in the Champlain watershed, right, they would have to.
They would likely
meet 3 acre.
They would likely, fall directly into this.
Yeah.
So you have 16.9 acres of impervious surface, counting roofs and gravel, but. And then there's 75 acres total. So you've got 56 acres
Plus, yep.
plus of impervious surface. But they think you need to build underground cisterns. You can't direct that water to soak into the ground and do what nature usually does.
No, so the
Do you have massive runoff and big events right to that brook, or?
I would argue that it's not as massive as one would think. Do we have runoff? Absolutely. Do we have just massive amounts? No, I would say that the floodwaters that come onto the fairgrounds come from the east. Do we certainly contribute? I have no doubt that when we have high water, the other issue that we're facing, and this has been a conversation in this whole piece with the city and the municipality, is we currently become a natural dammed up area because currently the culvert under the railroad is undersized. So because of that, the railroad actually holds the water onto the fair property. And we've made the case now for quite some time that needs to be upsized so that the water can actually pass through and get into the swamp area below the railroad tracks. And right now, there's been some struggles in that as well. There's been struggles.
The railroad has been working on further south anyway, larger culverts.
Yes.
Is there a plan right now to?
So currently we've started talks. There's been a couple meetings. And one of the big questions is where the funding comes from and things like that. So there's been discussion, but I don't think there's anything definitive for our site currently as far as what's going to happen to that culvert.
Does the city have any thoughts of helping or? I mean, do they see it as an economic draw to the area, or are they?
I think they do, and there's a couple people in the city that have made the comment of, well, why can't we just plug you into our system? Because we have the black lines on that map are city sewer mains that run directly across our property. But the issue with that is the city of Rutland is one of those cities that is already dealing with current overflow problems. So they can't plug in more stormwater to a system that's already experiencing overflows. So, whether or not they can increase their capacity at some point and be able to take more, that's a question. But right now, feasibly, it doesn't sound like there's any way for them to plug us in.
All right, we are about at time. So thank you for the information. Good discussion. Thank you and the others who had to step out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having us yet again. And thank you for your time and allowing me to speak to this issue. I know it wasn't on the agenda, but it was certainly, I think, something that needed to be discussed. So
for us to know about. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, we'll take a break. We're back at 10:45.